The distant hill pulsed with a soft, impossible light. Toby stood at the edge of the thicket, his eyes locked on the glowing flower. He took a single heavy step forward, his weight pressing into the damp soil. He had miles to cover, and he would not hurry. Then, a blur of fur shattered the stillness. A rabbit darted into the clearing, ears pinned back, legs churning in frantic, useless circles. The rabbit hit a fallen log, scrambled, slipped, and hit it again. It was a cycle of pure, breathless panic. Toby stopped. He pulled his head low and remained perfectly still. The rabbit skidded to a halt, chest heaving, looking at the silent turtle. Toby did not move. He waited. The rabbit twitched, looked at the log, then back at Toby. The frantic energy began to drain away. The rabbit sat back on its haunches, its breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the forest. It took one step, then another, mirroring the calm, deliberate pace of the turtle. The chaos had passed. They moved forward together, slow and steady. The forest canopy groaned as a sudden gale swept through the clearing. Branches whipped violently, scattering dead leaves like shrapnel. A large owl clung to a low-hanging limb, his wings unfurled to catch the air. He did not fight the wind with motion. He fought it with weight. Toby watched, bracing his feet against the shifting dirt as the air roared around them. The owl locked eyes with the turtle, shifting his position to remain centered. He stayed rooted, teaching them that stability was not about avoiding the storm, but about holding firm within it. Toby stood his ground, unmoving as the branches above finally settled into a rhythmic sway. As the wind died down, a squirrel scrambled down a trunk, dropping a cache of nuts near a scrawny, trembling bird. The bird did not fly away, but chirped in hunger. Toby reached into his pack, pulled out a portion of his own travel snack, and nudged it toward the bird. The squirrel paused, watching the gesture. The bird pecked at the offering, its shivering subsiding. A quiet warmth settled over the clearing, replacing the tension of the wind. They were no longer just travelers. They were a group. The forest floor ended abruptly. Ahead, the ground dropped away into a churning, gray expanse of water. It was not a stream, but a roaring river that tore at the banks with relentless force. Toby crept to the very edge, his claws digging into the mud. The sound was deafening, a constant, low-frequency rumble that vibrated through his shell. The rabbit arrived, ears twitching, eyes darting across the water to the far bank. He did not wait for a plan. He pushed off his hind legs, launching himself into the air toward a distant, mossy rock. He fell short. His front paws clawed at thin air before he splashed into the white foam. The current caught him instantly, dragging him downstream. He scrambled, limbs flailing, until he caught hold of a submerged root and hauled himself back onto the bank, shivering and gasping. The water was too wide, too deep, and far too fast. Toby looked at the owl, then at the squirrel. The path to the glowing flower was severed. The river had become a wall of liquid stone. They stood in a line, watching the dark water rush past, the reality of the obstacle sinking in. There was no way across. The owl beat his wings once, landing hard on a gnarly stump, his gaze fixed on a cluster of fallen timber upstream. He let out a sharp, rhythmic hoot, pointing his beak toward the water. Toby understood. He moved to the nearest log, bracing his feet, and pushed. The wood was waterlogged and heavy, refusing to budge until the squirrel joined him, digging his claws into the soil to gain leverage. Together, they rolled the timber toward the bank. It splashed into the churning water, instantly caught by the current. Toby dove forward, jamming his sturdy shell against the end of the log, pinning it against a jagged rock. It held. The rabbit, moving with frantic precision, dragged long, flexible vines from the underbrush. He wove them around the anchor points, pulling the knots tight with his teeth. They worked in a desperate rhythm, stacking log against log, lashing them together while the river clawed at their progress. A final vine secured the structure to a willow root. The bridge groaned but stayed firm. Toby stepped onto the rough, wet wood. He felt the sway beneath his feet, the river rushing hungrily just inches below. He took one step, then another, his focus absolute as he committed his weight to the fragile path. Toby reached the far bank just as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving only the long shadows of the trees. The ground beneath his feet shifted from mud to soft moss. Ahead, the magical flower began to stir. Its petals unfurled with a slow, rhythmic grace, releasing a soft pulse of energy. Then, a golden radiance erupted from the center, washing over the river, the trees, and the forest floor in a warm, steady glow. Toby moved toward the light, his pace steady, but he stopped. He looked back at the riverbank. The rabbit, the squirrel, and the owl were still on the far side. Watching the spectacle from the edge of the bridge, Toby turned his back on the glowing flower. He sat down on the mossy roots, keeping his eyes fixed on his friends as they began the final crossing. He would not enter the glow alone. He waited, his head held high, watching as the shadows retreated. One by one, they joined him. The rabbit hopped onto the grass, the squirrel scampered down the bank, and the owl landed softly beside them. They stood in a tight circle, the golden light reflecting in their eyes. The journey had been theirs to make, and the light was theirs to share.